You are listening to Esoteric Discussions with Valentine St. Aubin on Peterborough FM, www.peterborough.fm.
Hello and welcome to Esoteric Discussions with me, your host. I am Valentine St. Aubin, and it is the 16th of January 2013, and I'm glad to be back. You were listening to Simon DB with Sound just before myself, and this evening we're here talking about all kinds of wonderful subjects, of the metaphysical to the social to the political. I'm so glad to be back in the studio. As you know, Peterborough FM has been closed for a while for refurbishment, and we've got a spanking new studio, and it's a bit different. It's a bit bigger than our older studio, but it's quite nice, and I'm looking forward to having many more shows with exciting guests and talking about all kinds of strange topics that we love to talk about here on my show. So tonight, I'm going to be joined shortly by someone by the name of Richard Abbot. Richard, he wears several hats, but he is an expert in the tarot and in numerology and also in palmistry as well. And he's written several books relating to these disciplines. And he is also the organizer of the Mind, Body and Soul weekends that take place once a year here in Peterborough at the showground, but also across the UK as well. So if you'd like to find out about my guest while I get warmed up, you can visit his website at yourwayforward.co.uk, and he'll be joining me in about 5 minutes. I'm going to bring him on the air. But before I start the show, I just wanted to just recap, because it has been a while since I've been on air and many things have happened. We've had December the 21st, 2012, the very important point that the Mayans told us about. And, you know, and it was a strange day on the 21st of December last year. Now, I did a show with an astrologer back in May, and we basically knew that the show itself would, that the day itself would be a non-event, really, in terms of anything magical happening, because we could see that Chiron was on the ascendant, and Chiron usually brings disappointment and a bit of a letdown, even though there was all this great expectation. So I knew that wasn't going to be any doomsday thing or any kind of big event, but that's not what the date is actually about. It was basically a turning point for us, and we've now moved to the other side. So I'm expecting to see the world really kick into gear now, and I'm expecting to see people starting to open up their eyes just a bit wider. I'm still not sure that there is a mass awakening that everybody thinks is happening. I think some people are definitely asking questions, and I think other people are still sitting on the fence. But we have many years to go before we can begin to see the changes that we really want to see in our world around us. But I was listening to a radio show the other night, one of the shows on Coast to Coast AM. Now, Coast to Coast, they have all sorts of different kinds of guests that come on. Some of them are great. You know, some of them are very excellent at what they do and are great researchers and writers. And then others are a bit, you know, a bit out there, and they certainly do bounce to their own drum, beat their own drum. But this show I thought was very good because it was a synthesis of what the Maya predictions and what all of that was about. And it was a special show just related to the 21st of December 2012. And there were a variety of guests that came on. Robert Bouval was one of them. There was so many different guests. Whitley Strieber was on there as well. Danny and Brinkley. So many. And they all had their own versions of what they thought that what the date represents and what we should expect to now take place. But what I actually found very interesting was the comments by the listeners. Some really nice comments coming through from the listeners that were listening to the show that night, and they were talking about how so many of these researchers and what have you have made great predictions, and many of them didn't come true. And well, you know, money's been made, and you know, and all these things are true. I mean, there were definitely characters that did jump onto the 2012 bandwagon and made money off of it. And we're saying all sorts of wild things. I mean, I've heard all sorts of things from dimensional holes opening up, and you know, we're going to be going through ascension, you know, mass rapture, all these types of things. And of course, on the bigger scale of things, none of that has happened, and we're still here. But that's not exactly what the Maya were talking about to begin with. So at some point in the next couple of months, because I didn't get to have my show about this period of time and about this crossing, this phase of crossing that we're now on the other side of, I am going to try to get the guest that I had lined up before and get her back on and get her onto the show. And we'll have a good discussion about what all of it meant, what did the Mayans mean, and where we're going with things. There's many things that can be said astrologically as to where we are, and there's also a bigger picture that's unraveling in the political and the financial world around us. And we're coming into a time of great revealing, and people are asking questions that they haven't always asked. So that's the kind of stuff that we get up to here on my show, and it's called Esoteric Discussions, coming from the old term of how information used to be organized amongst the ancients. You know, these kinds of topics, these kinds of subjects used to be held by the elite. If anything, you would have to be initiated in a certain way to begin to learn these secrets. And the exoteric was information within the public domain. So that's why I like to call my show Esoteric Discussions, because, you know, I want to get the secrets out for the general public, and I believe that everybody should have this kind of knowledge at their fingertips and know the truth behind things. So that's what I get up to here, and we're going to take a break. I'm going to get Richard onto the line, and we're going to start our interview. So I'm going to play a track. This is Depeche Mode, and I'll be back in just a minute. So we're back here with me, your host, Valentine St. Aubin, and my guest tonight is Richard Abbot. Richard, would you like to say hello for us?
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. Thank you for joining me and just being patient while I got everything sorted out. And thank you to my studio manager as well. He's working late tonight for some reason. All right, so the last time I saw you, Richard, you were busy getting prepared for the Mind and Body and Soul weekend here in Peterborough at the showground. So how did all of that go?
It went really well, thank you for asking. It was back in September, and we had a lot of support from the local community. We were really pleasantly surprised, actually. I mean, you know, we shouldn't be surprised, but we were pleasantly surprised that we had such a good turnout and such engagement as well. A lot of people were really interested in finding out more about these kind of subjects. It wasn't just a question of preaching to the converted. There were some real, oh, okay, what's this all about? I've heard about it. Tell me more about it, kind of people. And we were really chuffed with that.
Well, in terms of numbers, how many people would you say? How many, you know, in terms of hundreds, maybe, would you say were actually there over the weekend?
We didn't quite make the 1,000 people. We didn't quite make four figures, but we weren't far off. And I didn't think that was too bad at all. Really, I thought that was a pretty good turnout.
Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to go this last weekend, and I haven't been able to go the last few weekends because I tend to be doing my night shifts at my other job, and they're always on the weekend. So I never get to attend, you know, the event that you put on. But hopefully, I will be able to attend this next year. And I'd like to maybe go down there and interview some of the speakers that you have and make a little show of it. I think that'd be nice, you know, to have something like that here on the show Esoteric Discussions as well. Because I think definitely that, you know, it's not for everybody. You know, I understand that this kind of information is not for everybody. But I suppose it is growing in terms of the people that are interested. And we definitely need to make sure that we are supporting it. And how long has it been running in this area? How long have you been putting these shows on?
Oh, in this area, we've only done it for a couple of years now.
Okay.
But it's been obviously going in other parts of for much longer.
Yeah, I've been to one in London. I went to one in London a few years back, and I really enjoyed that. And just for the listeners to know. I take it it's free to get in, is it, or do you have to buy a ticket?
Small charge, I'm afraid. Small charge for the upkeep of everything. But once people are in, it's all the talks and the workshops, which are really one of the main attractions there. All the talks and the workshops then are free, so you can really soak up a lot of information, try a lot of things, you know, experience a lot of tasters and a lot of toe dipping. You know, all included in the few pounds that it takes to get in the door. So, you know, we try and keep it as low as possible.
That's excellent, because I know when I went to the one in London, we had to pay for each workshop that we attended.
Yeah.
And it can get very expensive.
That's not necessary. We can bring, as long as we make a small cover charge on the door for everybody, we can bring all the workshops to everybody for free. And that's the really good thing that happened. That all of the talks and the workshops. Throughout the 2 days, they were packed. All of them were busy. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't just a case of people that were already into the subject going. It was a case of, oh, okay, I've heard about this, let me check it out. And there were a few skeptics wandering around, mm-hmm. and that's okay. That is really okay.
Well, you know, I have my suspicion about some of these skeptics. I think they're true believers underneath it all. I think they just want to be proven wrong somehow, and you know, make a big statement about it all. I think skeptics are actually important people, because we do have to always, you know, when it comes to information, we always have to make sure we're asking the right types of questions, and we have to be careful what we are believing and who we're trusting the information from. But I suppose some of us, you know, when it comes to these types of things, we automatically and intuitively can feel it as it's truth to us, you know. Whereas a skeptic, they fight that, don't they? They fight that internal quest inside of them.
Absolutely.
Yeah, until they can't take it anymore, and then they kind of go, okay, well, you might be onto something then, you know.
Absolutely, that's true. We had a really interesting chap come along, actually. And he won't mind me saying, because subsequent to the event, we got quite friendly. And he's a retired mathematician, mm-hmm. and he came in and he was all suited and smartly dressed and ordered and measured in his manner, and interested, but, you know, very, very doubting about some of the things that people were telling him. But he would ask questions. There was no turning up of the nose. He would ask and poke and prod, and he wanted to know and tell me about this and what about this and okay, well, what about that? And he really wanted to know, and he went around the whole place. I mean, he was there pretty much all of one of the days, and he wanted to know. He didn't want to believe. He wanted to see it with his own eyes, and I thought that was it's a pretty good kind of attitude. I mean, he was 70 odd years old. That was a good approach.
And I think that's why, doing these types of events are very important, because it's opening people up, isn't it? It's opening them up to these realms that have always existed. This type of information has been with us forever. For as long as we've been human, it's been here. It's just that we've lost touch with understanding it, haven't we?
Absolutely. I mean, the purpose of events like that is to provide, as you correctly say, the information. But it is then beholden on people to use their judgment and their discretion about how they go about using that information themselves. It's not about replacing old beliefs with new beliefs. That's not really the object of the exercise. It's to open to information, open to possibilities, maybe not even information sometimes, open to possibilities and potentials. And I never even considered that could be that kind of approach. Yeah. Then the person decides what they want to do with it, and that that's a very important thing that the person has to do when they go. They've got to exercise their discretion and judgment and free will about what they do with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, tell us about yourself, Richard. How did you begin on your journey? Because I know that you've accomplished quite a lot in your young years, because I wouldn't say that you're old, because I know I'm not old. And I think we were born around the same year.
We're about the same age.
About the same age, aren't we? Yeah. So, I consider you to be quite young, to be honest. But you've done quite a lot of stuff, haven't you? You've written quite a few books, and you've got these events that you put on with the company that you work with, and as well as training and teaching mystical arts. So tell us about how your journey started and how you got into all of this type of stuff.
Well, it all started. It all started back at school, and what happened was that we were in a school holiday, and it was the holiday between the end of I'm speaking in old money terms now, between the end of the old fifth form and the start of the sixth form. I don't know what that is in what they call it nowadays, but it's when you finish your GCSEs and you go to start your A-level. So it was in that holiday break there, and I landed up, I've no idea why I did this, but I went in a shop in Northampton and I bought a book about astrology.
Oh, right. Yes, that's my favourite. Yeah.
Yep. And I took it home and I learned over that summer holiday, because I'm a bit kind of like that, I kind of delve into things. I learned over that summer holiday how to draw up a birth chart and how to interpret it.
Yeah.
So I did it all in theory, and I went back to school in the September and started to show some of my mates, and some of them poo-pooed it. And as the months went on, I showed one of my teachers, and he was taken aback by it. And lo and behold, the next lesson that we had with him, he turned it over, this is absolutely a true story, he turned it over to a discussion of astrology.
Wow.
And we weren't meant to be doing that, I assure you. Yeah. But that's what he did. And I couldn't believe it. I was like, whoa, what the hell are you doing? This is, it disturbed me greatly. And then I found out subsequently that he had got in some trouble, some difficulty for doing that, because obviously the kid's gone home, parents have said, what have you done today? Kids had said, we did some astrology, and all sorts of complaints and things happened. So it wasn't long after that said teacher wasn't at the school anymore. And I found that quite disturbing. So fast forward a couple of years later, I bumped into him in the local Tesco's. And I hesitantly went up to him and said, what happened? What went on? And he said, well, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. The school asked me to gently move on, And I realised at that point that everything that my astrological chart had said about me was absolutely true, and that actually I would be better off going to do something else. So I did, he said, and I've never been happier.
Yeah.
So
That's quite amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's sort of your first experience to be touching somebody in that way.
yeah, and at the time, I won't lie, a little disturbing.
Yeah, well, of course. Someone losing their job, yes.
He set my mind at ease when, in that kind of, when I bumped into him in Tesco's. But, up to that point, it was a little bit disturbing. But it was at that point where, and it'd been building for a while, it was at that point when I realised then that this was serious. This was, I was really onto something here. And I really spent, that was, what were we now, 92, 91, 92. And I really spent, the rest of the 90s, I was working in London, working in Northamptonshire, sort of half and half. And I spent the rest of the time really kind of getting into the subjects in real kind of depth. Mm-hmm. And it was then that I discovered that, they really work.
Absolutely. And astrology is my first love as well. I started off in astrology when I was around maybe about 14 or 15, and I would just, because with astrology it's steps, isn't it? You have to learn bit by bit because it's layers upon layers of information. And so that was my first love as well. So completely, I can relate to that. And it does, and of course we know it works, but it does work, and it's stunning how accurate it is, especially when you use the progress chart and things like that. So you first started off with your astrology, and then how did you start moving into things like the tarot and palmistry?
Well, what happened was that I had the astrology experience with my teacher, and I, immediately after that happened, and immediately after he left, and before I saw him in Tesco's a couple of years later, that disturbed me, and I did put astrology down for a little while, because I thought, well, this is too accurate. And I went off to try and find other things. Lots of different things happened. But I settled on, one of the things that I settled on very early was numerology. Because what I found with numerology was that I could speak to, inverted commas, normal people about it. And I didn't have to get into any kind of discussion about any form of spirituality or anything invisible. I would just talk about numbers and what they meant and how they behaved. And a lot of people that I mixed with got that. And I found that to be more socially acceptable in my little group.
No, I think you're right, yes. I think it is. It doesn't seem as scary, does it, to people?
No, absolutely not. Much more tangible. And I was working in the business world and publishing and printing, where everything is measurement and everything is dimension, and anybody that deals in a day job with measurement and dimension will get numerology immediately, because they know that it isn't just a matter of numbers on a piece of paper. They know that for example, the number 8 behaves very differently to the number 7. Anybody that does accountancy or bookkeeping in any way, shape or form will know that numbers repeat in patterns. They'll have their spreadsheet or their Sage software books, and they'll see it. They'll see that numbers repeat themselves, and it's not just mathematical fluke. There's something else going on, and it's often an in for a lot of people. It's much more acceptable, I've found.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and because I think also, as we were saying earlier, people, especially when we're dealing with skeptics, they like to see things visually in a certain way. And yes. I suppose with numerology, you get that, as you were saying, that tangibility where you can prove that a priori. You can say, well, this is a number, and this is how I can relate it, and it makes sense to people, I suppose. Whereas astrology is you have to know A, and then you have to know B to understand the C.
That's exactly it. And the thing as well with numerology, I found, was that it acts as a good foundation into other areas. So, for example, wherever there is a number, there is also a shape, and there is also a pattern, and there is also a colour, and there is also a musical note, and there is also a tarot card. Mm-hmm. So before you know where you are, if you can nail the very, very simple fundamentals of some numerology, you've got a leaping off point to a lot of other things as well. You know, I consult with a lot of people, or rather a lot of people consult with me now, you know, about numerology, and a lot of them are musicians. And it's really, really interesting how people that play musical instruments immediately understand numerology and how different numbers behave differently.
So for those that are listening, and they're interested in numerology, what are the mechanisms of how it works? How would you be able to apply that to somebody? If you met someone and they're like, okay, so prove how numerology works to me. Can you do that? How does that work?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. First of all, the numerology, the way I work it always works on the basis of something called reduction. So, and it's not complicated, but it's a tiny little principle that does apply. So, for example, you were born on the 29th, okay? 29th of the month. What we deal with is not so much the number 29, but the addition of those two numbers. So 2 plus 9, which is 11. Now, we want to reduce, so then we would add those two together and say 11 is 1 plus 1 gives us 2. So whenever we have a multiple digit number of any description, what we're trying to do is add those digits together to take us down to a single digit. So the number 10, for example, is actually in numerology understood first by being the number 1, because it's 1 plus 0 gives us 1. The number 23 is understood by being 5. 2 plus 3 is 5. So there's lots of levels of doing this, but that's the first way that we approach it. We try to reduce multiple digit numbers down to a single digit, and then we can begin to understand what that original number is doing and how it's behaving. So that's the first thing.
Yep.
The second thing is what we can do numerology with names. We can because every letter of the alphabet has a number equivalent. You know, A is 1, B is 2, etc., etc. We can do numerology with names, but we can also do it with people in terms of their dates of birth. So what we always do with people who want some kind of example or proof is to take their date of birth and to add their day, month, and year of birth, add it together to give you a 4-figure answer, and then add the digits of that 4-figure answer together and keep reducing until you get that magical single digit that we're after. And that process, and there's an example of it on my website, I think, but that process, the number that we realise through doing that is called the life path number.
Okay.
That's the number that kind of tells us what that person is like.
And would you say it's accurate, these descriptions, when you deduce these numbers in the way that you do?
Absolutely, it is always accurate, but we've got to put a proviso in, because what we want to try and do with this, if we're going to do it seriously, is to depersonalize the answer. So in other words, if we take a date of birth, a day, a month, and a year, we add it up, we get the 4 figures, we add those 4 digits together, and we finally land up with the number 8, for example.
And I think that's my life path number. If I've done it correctly in the past, I think I was an 8.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah.
So if we get a number 8, we're not going to say that you are an 8, because that is too limiting, it's too ridiculous, because you are an individual of 7 or 8 billion on the planet that doesn't look, sound, or act like anybody else. So it's not appropriate to say that you are a number. However, because that is your date of birth and you can't change it, the number 8, in your case, has to have some significance on your life. It has to have affected you in some way. And the way that it's probably affected you is it's probably given you some character traits, some personality characteristics, and some particular issues to deal with. So I'm kind of making a distinction between just saying this is what you're like, because everybody's different.
Absolutely.
And, well, here's a number. By logic tells us that if it's your date of birth, it must have a significance for you, and then explaining what that significance is.
So what is the vibration of 8? What, if we could generalize, maybe we can go through the numbers. Like, for example, people who, when you deduce the numbers down and you get like a 1, for example, what does 1 express?
1 is where everything starts. It's the first number. 0 is not a number. Within numerology and most of mathematics, 0 is not a number. It contains nothing. It has nothing. So the first number is 1, and that is where everything starts. So you often find with 1 type people that they are innovators and independents, and they go about their own business in their own way, and they are self-employed, and if they're not self-employed, they want to be self-employed. And they don't take instruction well, and they're not followers. So it's that kind of singular, out there doing their own thing kind of energy.
My producer's saying he's a number 3. What does that mean?
Excellent. We'll come to 3 shortly then.
Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
So then after 1 you have 2, and where 1 was on its own, 2, all of a sudden there's something else to consider. 1 and 2. So 2 is about balance and awareness of other things. It's about hidden awareness. So what you often get in a 2 person is sensitivity. You often get somebody that is an intuitive, an emotional, a sensitive kind of character, somebody that is literally able to take the other side of the coin into the equation, a harmonizer, a balancer, a peacemaker, that kind of thing.
Okay, excellent. So what about 3 then?
Well, 3, if we track back the idea, 1 was by itself, 2 is in balance, and the 2 parts of each part of 2 come together and they give birth to a 3. So 3 is often about creativity and communication. You get a lot of people who work in the communication field who are 3s. To be fair, most of them are in front of the camera or in front of the mic rather than behind the mic normally. However, it's about creativity and communication, self-expression.
Now that's interesting, because 3 in astrological terms, the 3rd house is the house of Mercury, is the house of communication. So with numerology, can we associate the planets with the numbers as well?
Well, there's the snag. In 20, what are we now? 20. This will be the 24th year. In my 24th year of studying this, the answer to that is no, I haven't found a way to do that.
Okay.
There are loose associations between the planets and the houses and the signs and the numbers, but not in a sequence.
Right, okay.
Because we're only really going to deal with 9 numbers. And of course, there's 12 signs and 12 houses.
Yes.
So it doesn't quite fit. But that's okay.
Yeah. We're still finding the answers for that then, yeah?
Yes, we are. I will get there. I'll let you know.
All right, so tell us about number 4 then.
4, well, the thing with numerology is that if you don't understand it or you don't know what it means, then draw a picture. And for 4, all you got to do is draw a square. Because in the square, you've got 4 sides, 4 points, and the square tells us everything about number 4. It's about restriction and limitation and rules and order and routine and discipline and all those kind of things. 4 is a very, very material, down-to-earth number, and you don't often get many 4-type people who are interested in this kind of thing at all.
Okay, and so what about number 5?
5 is in the land of the 4. You've got the 4 sides of the box and the 4 corners, but that's too restrictive. And what you find is that there's always an urge to go outside of the box, to go outside of the rules and outside of the norm. And as soon as you do that, you have this kind of 5-type energy. It's all about being rebellious and different and adventurous. And a lot of people who are rule breakers and mavericks and against the system, some way, shape or form, are 5-type people. 5 is the number of travel and change and movement and variety, and absolutely the opposite of what 4 was all about: restriction and containment.
See, I would have thought I was a number 5, but yeah, I'm a boring 8. But
Well, not boring, but we'll come to 8.
We'll get to 8, yes. So let's say. So what can we say about number 6?
6 is in the tarot, the 6th card of the major arcana is the Lovers, and the number 6 is all about, in some way, shape or form, love, family and responsibility. What you often get with a number 6 is you get somebody who is carer of some description or another. Maybe they are only, inverted commas, only a mother or a father, but they are a committed, long-term, full-time mother or father. You know, it's the thing that defines them. It's the thing that makes them who they are as a person. Outside of the family, you get a lot of people who are 6s who are involved in social work and community work. Very, it's a very big number for looking after other people.
Right. Service to others.
Yeah, service. Service is a good word for it, yes. Yeah. Very much associated with 6.
Okay, so tell us about number 7.
7, very interesting. 7 is the number of the seeker, the questioner, the skeptic, actually. But the skeptic in the true sense of the word, of somebody that actually wants to know and does have an open mind. The 7 is, a lot of scientists are 7, and also a lot of hippie mystic type people are 7 as well. And that's a very interesting kind of thing, because they don't, on the face of it, have anything in common at all. But of course they do, because they're both those kinds of people are after something more meaningful.
Excellent.
Something deeper, some kind of answers to things.
So you could say they're like analytical types of people.
Very much so, very much so. Good number for researchers and the people who get into the detail of things.
Rightio, so let's get to number 8 then.
Number 8, well, this will make you laugh, I'm sure. In the Chinese culture, the number 8 is the number of money.
That will make me laugh, because I don't have any.
Well, this is often the case.
Yeah.
It isn't the number of wealth, but it is the number of money. Now, in the tarot, 8 is often associated with the card strength.
Yes, I know
so
that card.
What we have with the number 8 is we have, in one way, shape or form, and it is actually, it's a bit of a tricky number actually. In one way, shape or form, we always have somebody who is a number 8 who has to find a way to relate to power.
That's a good way to put that, yeah.
Yeah, and that might translate as somebody who, for example, Muhammad Ali, who decided that his relationship with power was to be that he was going to take as much of it as he possibly could.
Mm-hmm.
Alternatively, you might get somebody who goes in the other direction and maybe, at the other end of the spectrum, maybe denies their power. But what we always have with the 8 is somebody that is actually quite a dominant and powerful character. And we mean those things in good and positive ways.
Yeah, yeah.
There's no messing around with a number 8.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
But that's how it should be.
Yeah.
That's how it should be. There shouldn't be any messing around with 8. And the 8, where possible, should gravitate in life towards situations where they can be in charge.
Oh, don't encourage me. Yeah, we're not very good at taking orders, I don't think.
No,
I think
8 is not good at all at taking orders.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
8 really profoundly and fundamentally, 8 has to be the boss.
Oh no. Okay, so tell me about 9, because I know 9 is a great number, and it's always got really positive things associated with it.
Absolutely. Now, 9 is the number, or in numerology, 9 is the number of completion, because there is no number higher than 9, because 10 is 1, 11 kind of stands separately, but 11 is also 2, 12 is 3, etc., etc. So 9 is the highest, biggest, most complete number that there can possibly be. And there's all sorts of mathematical, you can Google them up, there's all sorts of mathematical tricks that you can do with the number 9. If you do your 9 times table, and 1 9 is 9, 2 9s are 18, but 18 is 1 plus 8 is 9, and 3 9s are 27, and 2 plus 7 is 9.
Yes,
there's all sorts of mathematical things you can do with 9, and it goes on almost forever. 9 is about, and it's most profound, it's about human potential. So you with 9, you get people who are big characters. They're big thinkers, they're big doers, or they certainly have the potential to be that. Often very outgoing, often a little bit eccentric. It's a rule-breaking number. In a way, 9 actually incorporates all of the other numbers, in a way. And you get people who are in the land of the 9, you get people like Bob Geldof,
Yeah.
Cranston,
Yeah.
and Boris Johnson, and people like that. And
Oh no.
the outcomes of what these people are doing, but the way that they behave.
Yeah, Boris Johnson is very gregarious, isn't he? Yeah. Very big character.
Numerologically, whatever the rights and wrongs are, numerologically, not a buffoon.
Mm-hmm. No, he's not. No.
Absolutely not. There's a lot more to him than meets the eye, as there always is with a 9. Now, what you sometimes get with 9, to be fair, what you sometimes get with all of the numbers, is occasionally you get a reaction in the other direction. So what you sometimes have with 9, you meet somebody, and actually they'll carry the potential to be a big character, but they'll find themselves a little bit downtrodden. And you often get this with 9, because 9 is not often interested in themselves. They're often interested in humanity. And what you can sometimes get is that they kind of like put themselves at the back of the queue a little bit, neglect themselves a little bit. So, all of the numbers have got something good going for them, and all of the numbers have got a
Yes.
shadow.
It's the duality, isn't it? The shadow that resides in both sides of things within ourselves, isn't it?
Yes.
So I want to ask you, Richard, because we're coming towards the end of the show, to be honest with you, and it's unfortunate because I'm really enjoying all of the detail that you're giving here. But I wanted to definitely ask you about numbers in terms of where we are with time. So, we're in 2013. So obviously we can look at years and see some kind of an expression, can't we, as to what the mood might be around us, or what that, what the year might bring us. So let's start from 2010, because we don't have too much time. Let's sort of discuss, how would you synthesize what 2010 was all about?
Well, can I just be very briefly, a little bit broader to put it in context, because it's very, very important. This is 2013, and this is year 13 of the 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay. Virtually everybody listening to this show was born in the 19s.
Yes.
Now, that in itself is of profound significance. We could do an hour of just about that, because everything now in the world is dominated by the 2. But everything that we were born into was dominated by the 1.
Right, yes.
If we're looking for some kind of shift in human behavior, then numerologically that is the shift. It was the shift on the millennium from where everything started with a 1 to where everything now starts with a 2. And in a nutshell, there's a lot more to it than this, but in a nutshell, that is the transition from the 1 male energy to the 2 female energy.
Yes, because everybody is talking about how we're now moving into the feminine energy.
Going
back to how it used to be, before.
There's no doubt about it. We are in the land of feminine energy, and that might be embodied by feminine males or feminine females, but it's going to be the energy of sharing, cooperation, maybe a little bit of uncertainty, much more emotional, much more intuitive, much less confrontational.
I think you can... Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, so that's the background, but so we're in the early days of this. It's going to last for 999 years, 1,000 years. We're in year 13 of it. Now, so everything that happens now in this decade, in the 10s, because 10s is 1, and 1 is about innovation and new beginnings. So this decade, 2010 to 2019, is going to be all about, it's going to be laying the seeds for what happens for the rest of the century.
And that's a really good way to put that. And we can also back that up astrologically as well, can't we?
Yes.
We can see that, there's many ways to the truth, and we can definitely see that with Pluto and Capricorn as we speak in these next 9 to 10 years.
Absolutely, no question about it. Now, it's happened before in history, numerologically, because in the 10s of the 1900s, so the 1910s, 1911, 1912, 1913, etc., you could arguably say that the history of the rest of the century was set, not for the better, I hasten to add, but it was set really in the 1910s, because you had the First World War, the fallout and the consequences of which bred the Second World War, and the consequences of which bred the Cold War, etc., etc. You can go back further, and you could say that the Industrial Revolution was seeded in the 1810s, and the map of Europe was designed and laid out in the 1810s. So there's a lot of precedent for this. There's lots of these examples. Lots of precedent here that what we do 2010 to 2019 is not just important now, but it's absolutely pivotal as to what kind of world we're going to see out and our children are going to see out.
So, numerologically speaking, if I can get that out, how are you seeing that, if we can wrap this up in terms of how you're seeing the numbers and maybe where we're going to go? Do you see things becoming positive post 2019, 2020? Do you think we would have made our decisions by then? How much more work do you think we have to do?
I think we will have set the course by 2019, whether it be good or bad. I think the prime challenge, because it's all the numbers are duality, and the good will always take care of itself. But I think the prime challenge in this time, numerologically, is the negative of the 2, and the negative of the 2 is over emotional. Mm-hmm. So the danger, I think, that we face now in our own lives, in our family, in our community, in our society, in politics, in government, business, the world, is in reaction. I think we've really got to mind our reaction to stuff. I think that's the negative, if there's a negative anywhere. There is the real potential in every situation now in this decade for overreaction. And this is why, although I'm not an uncritical fan of his, this is why I do think that President Obama is a good thing, because I do think his coolness, his generally unemotional nature, he's not a reactor. He's not a bomb waiting to go off. I think that him being in that position is a good thing, because I think level heads are going to be needed throughout this decade. And I think if we do that, I think the good will take care of itself.
Excellently put, Richard. We're out of time. I want to thank you for being on the show with me tonight. I think you've been a great guest, and I'll have to have you on again. We have to do more of this. It's very
Anytime
interesting.
you like. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm going to close your mic, and I'll be in touch soon, okay?
Take care. Thank you very much.
Right, that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. Another show. But up next is the flip side. And I'll be back, not next week, but the week after next. And until then, keep your eyes on the stars.